Well, hello there, my name is Vladimir, welcome to my home studio. Today we're taking a look at my amp history and I'm laughing already because, oh boy, just coming up with the material for this video and just searching for photos of each amp and sound clips and stuff like that. Basically, I had forgotten like 5 or 6 amps that I actually own for a little while, and there's still probably 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 missing that didn't make this video just because I don't remember them. I cannot find any photos of them or anything like that, but they probably have been like, there's probably some gaps in this story of mine. So grab yourself a cup of coffee. This won't be a super short video. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's get started. I do not remember the exact model of the amp I started with. I did find this awesome photo of a 16-year-old me trying to be heavy metal, and I'm pretty sure that my first amp was a Laney Hardcore series. I found this photo online called Hardcore Max, and it seems to match pretty well how the amp looks in the photo you just saw. So I would guess that was the amp I started with. We bought it from Russia at the same time when we bought me my first electric guitar, the green guitar with a single humbucker that's labeled Flight. If you want to see the guitar history video, links below in the description. A sentence that I will be saying many times during this video. But yeah, that's what I started with, a transistor amp. I had no idea how to set it up. I just cranked the gain as you do when you are 16, or even, actually I think I was young when I got that, probably, I don't know, somewhere between 10 to, I don't know, 12 or 13. And at some point the volume knob on the amp broke, so we took it to a guitar shop and they were good salesmen, so they actually ended up selling me a PV Studio Pro 112 amp, which was my main amp for several years after the Laney. So basically I traded my Laney. They probably knew that they could fix it easily and sell it, and we used a little bit of more money. By we, I mean me and my father. So we kind of cashed in some money and got the PV Studio Pro 112. In the photo you can also see the awesome Digitech, I think it was called RP1000. All the multi-effects back in the day, they were amazing. But yeah, that was my amp for several years, and it was actually my amp until I moved to Tampere, the city I studied in 2008. And I think it was in the beginning of 2009, after I kind of got accustomed to going to school and all of that stuff, I realized that, hey, there's this kind of student loan thing. Basically, I could loan money for a really low interest rate and it would be backed by government. That money is actually meant for studies, but I went and bought this, which is a MESA Boogie Express 550 head. And I had some other cabinet for a little while, but then I settled on Engel vertical 2x12 with I think the speakers were like V60 or something, and this was my setup for a while. Oh boy, I had no idea, or like I didn't have any understanding about tube amps really. I was a huge Petrucci fan at that time, and he played MESA Boogie amps, so that meant I needed to play MESA Boogie amps in order to achieve his sound. So I went with the Express 550, didn't even understand probably what the amp was. Like, looking back, it's probably actually a pretty good amp, but the MESA Boogie amps aren't the best kind of starter amps. They are difficult to learn how to tweak because the treble affects how the middle control works and the middle control affects how the bass control works, or are they other way around? Anyway, like all the knobs in the signal chain affect a lot how the next one works, and it's not as simple as if you want more treble, you just crank the treble and that's it, because it will also increase the gain, and yeah, it's a mess to start with at least. And I remember struggling finding good sounds, or the sounds I wanted from this amp, basically metal sounds, because I was 100% into metal at that point. At some point I came to conclusion that I have the wrong amp and the wrong cabinet, so I ended up selling those both, and for a brief time I had the MESA Boogie dual rectifier Recto-verb, so not the new Recto-verb 25 series but the old one. I think this had a built-in spring reverb or a built-in reverb. This was a good sounding amp, but again it wasn't the sound I was going for. I didn't know how to set up these amps. I think you can get a pretty close Petrucci tone from the Rectifier series, but I didn't know that at the time, didn't know how to use them, so I ended up selling it as well. And selling this amp was an interesting thing to do, to say the least, because I was selling it to a kind of pretty young kid who knew how to play a little bit. He, well, actually was pretty good playing. He actually got pretty good sounds. He and his friend came by and they tried it out, and he said that yeah, he's really interested. He just needs to check this with his father because the father would have been or would be paying for the amp. And that, from that moment, I think there was a span of like 1 or 2 weeks where both the kid and his father texted me several times trying to get a discount on the amp. I remember giving them a little bit of discount because they would pick it up and like I wouldn't have to ship it or anything, but at some point it just became ridiculous because they were texting me many times during that week or two, and it was just stupid at some point. They did buy the amp in the end, so it was all fine, but it was a really weird selling experience. At this point I had realized that in order for me to sound like a John Petrucci, I need a MESA Boogie Mark series amp. I'm not 100% sure if Mark V was even released at that point, or maybe it was just about to be released. So I found a used MESA Boogie Mark IV combo, the smaller combo, from a British guitar store, and bought that. If you have ever owned a Mark series amp, you probably know that yeah, they're super versatile, but boy, they are also difficult to kind of tweak basically. Again, everything affects everything, so if you turn the treble knob up, you might want to lower the gain, and when you lower the gain, you might want to adjust the bass, and just kind of chain of things, and I never really learned how to use it. I did have it for a while. I still think it's actually a good amp, kind of would be fun to have it at my disposal. I personally love the Mark IV series much more than Mark V, and yeah, I just got tired of tweaking at some point, so I ended up selling this as well. And this is where the timeline gets a bit more murky. I did have a Blackstar HT5 for a while. I think I was kind of looking for different amps and I just needed to have something to play. And the Blackstar HT5 isn't a bad amp. It's actually a decent sounding amp. I recorded my second ever YouTube video with this one. I did the Joe Satriani cover. You can find that cover on my channel. It's from 2009 or 10 and the playing is bad, but you can find it and watch it if you want to. If you do watch it, please comment on that video and let me know that you have watched this. It would be silly and fun and something like that. Yeah, but basically I had the Blackstar HT5 at that point. At this point I also got in touch with a company called Bluetone, which is an amp manufacturer from Finland. They made both custom amps and cabinets, and we were working on some website stuff with them. I have actually done like 3 different websites from the span of like 2010 to 2019. I've built 3 different websites for them and they gave me a nice discount on a 1x12 cab, which was nice. You can see a tiny bit below it. By the way, this photo is actually a screenshot from that Joe Satriani cover. So again, if you want to see it, go and find it. I'm not going to put it in the description, just no. While I was kind of searching for my new amp, I had a Jet City something, Jet City 50 I think. The Jet City amps had kind of just appeared at that time, 2010, somewhere around that time. And again, this amp was a weird story as well because I ordered one from Thomann and that package actually got lost by the Finnish post service. So Thomann ended up sending me a second one, which arrived, and I tried it out and decided that it wasn't my thing. It was pretty good, but just not my thing. I didn't actually know what was my thing at that time. I remember it being a good amp. I think it was kind of a Soldano type of sound actually. And yeah, tried it out, sent it back to Thomann, and probably like 3 weeks after I had sent this amp back, I get a note from the Finnish post office that, hey, we have found your amp, you can pick it up. And I just told them that, hey, please send it back, I don't need it anymore. So oh boy, those were the days. So yeah, Jet City went back. This photo is just from a website. I don't think they looked like this at the time. I just didn't have any photo of that amp because I didn't have a need to photograph it because it was sent back basically. At some point I had a microcube as well, hanging out. I think I just bought it for fun, so when I would go to my father's place or my wife's parents or anything like that, I would have something to grab with me so I could jam over there. Microcubes are fine, they're fun little amps, and I had one at some point. After the whole Jet City thing, I ended up getting my first ever orange amp, which was the TH30. And this was the first time I shopped at Anderton's. I think Rob Chappas started to become a thing in 2010, 11, somewhere in that time frame. And yeah, basically I shopped with Anderton's, the amp arrived and there was clearly something wrong with it. I tried swapping out all of the preamp and power amp tubes and there was still something going on where the amp would suddenly jump in volume like crazy, and when you play in an apartment that's pretty scary because I remember getting ringing ears at least once because the amp suddenly jumped in volume like crazy and my ears were ringing basically for the next 10 minutes. I reported this to Anderton's. They weren't too receptive about it. I sent it back and they were, when they received it, they were claiming that one of the preamp tubes was loose and that was the reason, and didn't give me a full refund for the amp. I wasn't really happy about it, but I thought that was a learning experience for me, I guess, not to shop from a store that doesn't have a really good return policy. After the orange thing, I ended up getting a Blackstar HD20. I think I sold my HD5 at that point as well, and I just wanted to see if the bigger Blackstar would be better because the HD5 was small and sounded a little bit small. I wanted to try the bigger version. I don't think this amp stayed in my household for long. Yeah. It was, I'd say I had it for a month maybe and thought, nope, not my thing, moving on. And at that time the Mark V series had been released. I tried one at a local store and got myself a MESA Boogie Mark V. This was supposed to be an amp that ended all other amps for me, and I remember that this actually stuck with me for some time at least. I really tried to learn to use it, tweak it. I remember playing it live, or at least at band rehearsals several times as well, and recorded quite a bit with it. I remember trying different cabs with it as well. And while I had the Mark V, the Blue Tone company I just mentioned earlier wanted to send me this little kind of interesting looking amp to try out. It was called Lee Jr., a kind of 5-watt all tube little amp. They actually sent me a second one after a while. I returned that one because it was like a prototype, and sent a second one which was more finalized. This was a fun little amp, kind of Marshall-ish, but not exactly. I'm not sure what it was. It was dynamic, a really good recording amp, and there wasn't like too much clean sound available, it being like 5 watts. But I do remember actually playing live with it at least once. I think I had a MESA Boogie 2x12 rectifier cabinet, placed this on top of the amp, not on top of the amp, I placed the amp on top of the cabinet, and just when I wanted a clean sound I would roll down the volume on the guitar, and when I needed some like high gain, well not high gain but like overdrive distortion, I just opened the guitar volume and it worked more than fine for that situation. So a fun little amp. At some point I also got an orange Dark Terror. I think this was the time when I had the Lead Junior, the Dark Terror and the Mark V, and I think there was one rehearsal where I went with both the Mark V and the Dark Terror, and I realized that the Dark Terror was 100 times more easy to tweak in a band rehearsal when you wanted to change the sound a little bit, and that was the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. And I decided I'm going to sell the Mark V because no matter how much I tried, I just couldn't make it work for me. It was always too dark and boomy, and later I've learned that many MESA amps are really kind of rounded and dark sounding, and later I've also learned that I'm more like a Marshall-ish guy. So yeah, I ended up selling the Mark V and actually made a custom order from this Bluetone company. And while waiting for that amp to be ready, I had the orange Dark Terror and the Lead Junior heads, and they were nice little amps, fun to record. I remember especially kind of connecting with the Dark Terror. I wasn't a huge fan of how it felt to play. It was a bit worse than on the Lead Junior, which was super dynamic, but I love the gain structure, just the gain sounds of the Dark Terror, and remember recording a bunch of stuff with it. I have a bunch of kind of silly demos on my computer where I play that amp. Just a really fun little amp. During the time while I was still waiting for my custom order to be made, I, for whatever reason, ended up getting a Cornford Roadhouse 30 as a combo, because I think the ordering times were rather long for the custom amp, so it took a while, and I thought I needed something pretty portable and good sounding. I remember listening to a lot of demos about this amp, and it seemed to sound really good, but when I got it, I really didn't like it. It just didn't sound anything like in the demos. Might be also due to the fact that I didn't know how to watch those demos, or I wasn't too much into recording, so I didn't kind of understand the difference between how the amp sounds in the room and how it sounds, well, in a demo, basically mic'd up or anything like that. So I ended up returning it pretty quickly. Again, I shopped with a different British store that had a really bad kind of return policy, and I think I ended up paying like 80 euros to ship it back, which was absolutely ridiculous. I should have checked that before I bought the whole thing. I didn't. I was just really excited to get the amp, and I deeply regret the whole, well, scenario thing. Basically, yeah, ended up paying a lot of money for an amp that stayed at my place for 2 weeks maybe. After the Cornford episode, at some point, my custom order amp, the Bluetone Iron Man, was ready. Basically, it was a 2-channel amp which had a kind of Fender style clean channel and a Soldano SLO 100 type overdrive channel or gain channel. 3-band EQ for both of the channels, independent volumes. Besides both of the channels having their independent channel volumes, there was also a global master volume, which also had the post-phase inverted master volume, or like the global master volume was that. So the amp would sound pretty similar whether you were playing really loud with the master volume cranked up or when you dial it down for home use. This was a good sounding amp, no complaints about that. I remember recording with this amp a lot, played it live several times, and because I was still going through my brain damage phase of my life, basically where I was selling and trading gear, I remember ending up modifying that amp at some point, but before that I had this ZT Lunchbox amp. It's a transistor amp which is like 200 watts or something. I got it so I could go to some quick gigs or rehearsals just to play for fun, and when I didn't want to bring my amp head, and I think I still had like a 2x12 cabinet at that time, which was absolutely insane for mostly home use. So I got that. I don't think it stayed at my place for too long. And after the ZT amp was gone, Marshall had released a kind of, I think it was a 50th anniversary series, something like that. But they basically released the JTM1, JCM1 and a couple of others as well. And I ended up getting the JCM 800 1-watt combo, which was actually a really good sounding little amp. I still had my Bluetone Iron Man as well at that point. But as with all of my guitar and amp things, this thing didn't stay at my place too long. But it did get me bitten by this kind of Marshall sound bug, and because of that I ended up ordering a blue tone combo, which I wanted to be like the JCM 800 combo but with much more headroom, and this was somewhere around 20 watts or so. It was just a single channel, kind of a plexi style channel. Plexi isn't exactly the same as JCM 800, but actually, oh yeah, I remember my friend had the JTM1, or the kind of plexi version of that same anniversary combo, the Marshall one that is. I tried that one, loved it more than the JCM 800 one, so I ended up ordering a blue tone custom made combo, which we called VH Custom, Vladimir Halidin Custom VHC basically. And yeah, this amp, if I'm totally honest, this amp was bad. There was something about the circuitry or something where the amp would kind of squeal right like crazy on high volumes. We tried it out with a friend of mine at his rehearsal space, and we tried swapping the tubes and everything, never were able to locate the problem with that. I tried to troubleshoot it with the company itself. It kind of never took off really. They said that that's how it's supposed to work, which I didn't really believe, to be honest. And yeah, I ended up trading this amp pretty quickly, to be honest. I was really disappointed in it. It didn't sound in any way the way I wanted it to sound, basically. I don't know if it was issue with me making a wrong kind of order, or whether it was issue with the company, not sure. But the amp moved on to some other guy and he seemed to love it, so everybody was happy basically. Then the timeline gets a bit vague, uncertain, something like that. Again, because I remember modifying that Blue Tone Ironman, the custom head I had. I remember sending it to be modified in such a way that the drive channel would become a kind of more JCM 800 type of channel. They have a, I think it's probably their most popular amp. They have an amp called Dusty Road. By the way, I think that's a pretty cool name for an amp like that, which had this kind of Fenderish clean and JCM 800 type overdrive channel. So I sent that for modification at some point. Then I remember also ordering a Shure, that's how I think you pronounce it, Badger amp, that I kind of A-beat against that. And at the time the Blue Tone company really said that, hey, we want to make you an amp that you really like, what would be your dream amp? And I ended up speccing this kind of Sir Badger type amp, because I had the Badger at my place for a little while. I think it only stayed there for a couple of weeks, because I think I ordered it from Thomann and I had the 30-day return policy. So at some point somehow I ended up having the Sir Badger, the Dusty Road, which was previously known as Iron Man, now it was known as Dusty Road, and also the Blue Tone Old Beast was how we decided to call the custom amp, which is kind of Sir Badgerish, but I think it was a bit more kind of Soldano-ish sounding thing. And I also ordered a custom 2x10 cabinet with it. Blue Tone started producing 2x10 cabinets at that point, and that was a really good sounding cab matched with the amp. I just like the amp. I remember sending it back 1 or 2 times to kind of tweak the sound a little bit, but in the end it was really good. If you would roll down the volume, it was really nice, pristine cleans. I think it had EL84s in the power stage, and when you would open up the volume, you would have this awesome rock sound. Just a really good amp. I ended up selling my Dusty Road at that point, returning my Sir Badger as well. You can see that like this has been like complete madness over those years, somewhere between 2009 and 2014, or 15 actually, not 15. Let's say between 2009 and 2015 or 16. There was a complete madness, like gear-wise. Just, I don't even try to pretend to know what was happening. So basically I ended up in a situation where the Old Beast was my only amp, the 4x10 cabinet and the head, that is. I sold the Dusty Road, I returned this Badger as well, and had I not got in trouble with the Finnish government about my student allowance. I think that was the reason why I had to sell it. Basically, I owed the government almost like 2,000 euros or something like that, and had a pretty short time span to return that. So I was forced to sell that amp and that cabinet, and luckily I did get it sold before I needed to pay for that whole thing, and that sucked, to be honest, because that was a good amp, that was a good cabinet. Basically, I again lost some money because it's a custom amp. The resale value isn't the same as with some branded amps, if it would have been Marshall or a MESA Boogie or anything like that. But yeah, I got money back to the government. Basically, everybody was kind of happy. And I still had a little bit of money left, so I ended up getting an orange Rocket 30 combo. Not the 32, the stereo one, but the orange Rocket 30, which is basically a classic. It's a damn good sounding amp, super heavy, but really good sounding amp. I absolutely love it. The first ever song I've released was recorded purely with this amp in my home studio at the time. And listening to the sounds, it still sounds really good. Maybe the only issue I had with it was that it wasn't super receptive to all pedals, and it wasn't the most dynamic kind of feel wise, but it was just a really good amp. This was also the time when I started to assemble my Uralton Junior over there, which is basically a kind of amp built from a kit. So I was working on that as well at the time, and once this amp was ready, there should be a nice photo of it. And once it was ready and I was in need for some money, I ended up selling the orange and just using that setup, the head and the 1x12 cabinet over there in the corner. And then at some point I went to a guitar store and saw the Fender Bass Breaker 20 or 30, I don't remember what the bundle names are, but basically one of the bass breakers, the new ones. I ended up getting that as well, so at some point I had the Uralton Junior and the bass breaker, and it was super fun to test some stereo effects and stuff like that at my home studio. It was just so, the sounds was just huge and epic, and it was really fun. And because I ended up selling the bass breaker at some point and decided to give the MESA Boogie amps one last try. At this point they had released the Mini Rectifier series and especially the Recto-verb series, so I ended up getting one used, and this was a fine amp, but after playing it for quite a while I wasn't happy with the mid-range or kind of mid-range characteristics it had, so I ended up selling that. By the way, I did make a demo video of this one. That video ended up being kind of a template to videos I do now. If you want to see a demo of this, I'm going to put a link in the description actually, because I'm still kind of proud of that demo. It was a blatant copy of what Pete Thorne does basically, but who cares really? I'm not playing like Pete Thorne in that video, but you get to hear the amp and the sounds and stuff like that. But yeah, had that amp for a while and decided that I'm done with MESA for life. And I again went back to using just the Uralton Junior, and at some point I wanted to find something else because I was getting tired of kind of carrying the cabinet and the head and wanted something with maybe an FX loop, so I ended up getting a Hot Rod Deluxe that stopped by just for a little while. We did some comparison shootouts at a local rehearsal space using the Uralton Junior and the Hot Rod Deluxe, and I think there was some third amp as well. And I never really got connected with it. It was heavy, and while it was an awesome pedal platform, it was crazy loud. The master volume on those is kind of stupid, and it was pretty much unusable at home. So I ended up selling that and got myself an orange Rocket 32 combo, the amp that kickstarted my YouTube career basically. The first official video I've ever made for this channel, or official video, I don't know, was basically this amp. I did a song, the kind of feature overview, all of that stuff. It was a great amp. I still think it's just a really great amp, but the thing is, all of my videos are being shot in a small apartment, and in order for me to be able to basically play anything, I would always have to place the amp in a closet that's over here, and kind of taking the amp there, miking it up for every single video became incredibly annoying at some point. So I started to look at like Juno's Torpedo Live and Torpedo Reload and stuff like that. And because of the way that amp is made, the Rocket 32 that is, there's actually two different separate power amps that need to be plugged in at the same time, or they need to be plugged in at all times. Which means if I was using a Torpedo Live or Torpedo Reload, I would only be able to kind of use one side of those speaker outputs, and the other side or the other speaker would still be working, and that's a no-go for me. So I ended up selling that amp, and I ended up doing a bunch of videos with just the Uralton Junior because I was still kind of searching for some other amps. I did have the Joyo Meteor, by the way, which isn't even in my photos over here. Yes, as I mentioned, I forgot something. I just remembered I had the Joyo Meteor as well, which I got from the first kit card. I had that and the Uralton Junior for a while as my amp setup. And then at some point I ended up buying my friend's Victory Sheriff 22, which was a nice amp. You can see that in several videos as well that I made. I also made a demo of that amp. I made the wattage thing because it has like the 0.3 watt output. I made a comparison video of that, and yeah, basically it was featured in many of my videos, but at some point I realized that it wasn't the best amp for pedal demos because of the headroom and how it takes some of the pedals and stuff like that. So I ended up selling that, went back to my Uralton Junior. I think I sold the Joyo as well at some point, and then I think in June 2018 I finally made an order for the REVV Dynamis over here. It took a bit longer than they promised for it to be delivered, but that's fine. I'm just happy for the guys that they have so many orders in right now that they are super busy and they can grow the company and stuff like that. I'd say the amp was definitely worth the wait. There's a demo on my channel, links below in the description, where I go through everything that the amp does, how it sounds and stuff like that, and I'm just super happy that I got it. It takes pedals really well. It has an awesome overdrive channel as well, and it will be my main demo amp for pretty much everything that I'm going to do from now on, except if there's any amps I see in my future, I might get something like a Boss Katana 50 or something like that, like a nice good sounding budget amp, which I could then use to demonstrate pedals and stuff like that, because not everybody can afford a $2,000 amp. I completely understand that. So when I do, for example, an overdrive pedal demo, this is plugged in by the way, if I do an overdrive pedal demo, for example, I could demonstrate or do the most of the videos through the REVV Dynamis, because it just takes pedals really well, and I feel you can hear, or kind of, you can hear the true sound of the pedal, let's put it that way. But then it would be really interesting to try the same pedal through some sort of budget amp. Maybe it's a Boss Katana, maybe something else. Actually, let me know down below in the comments if there's some other kind of budget amp you think would be even a better one than the Katana series. I just know that that's been super popular, and many people say that it actually works really well with pedals, so maybe that, I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments. And that pretty much concludes my amp history. It's mostly complete madness, complete madness, that's how you say it. And I really don't know what was happening during those years. I think the main theme was that I was looking for ways to improve my tone without realizing that the best improvement in tone happens through me practicing the guitar, because honestly I think I spent like four times more time researching gear than I spent time playing, which is stupid, but that's how it was. And I was kind of trying to find a quick way to improve everything by switching gear all the time. You can see that in my guitar video and the amp stuff. I can promise you already that I will never do a pedal video, because tracking down all the pedals I had is absolutely impossible. I've had hundreds of them, literally, and that video would be 7 hours long and nobody wants to watch it, and I don't want to make it or edit it or anything like that. So that will never happen, but this happened. So the guitar video. I think that's about it. I would love to hear how many amps you have owned, and what was your favorite. Is there any that you regret selling, or is there something that you really want to get? That's always fun to discuss as well. Let's get the discussion going down below in the comments. If you like this video, found it entertaining, helpful, anything like that, please consider giving the video a thumbs up. And if you want to support what I do, get yourself a Cat Pick Studios t-shirt, links below in the description. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well, so you won't miss any of my videos as they come out. I don't know what this is. Time to stop talking. I've been talking for way too long. If you made it to the end of this video, please type fat cat below. Fat, like you know, fat cat. Please type that below in the comments so I know you've made it over there. Thanks for watching this video. I shall see you next time.